Today's intention is to share a message and receive a message of growth.
Hey, it's Bobby. Welcome to Student of Intention, where we help you enjoy the pursuit of purpose. And remember, don't wait, start small, learn as you go. Hey friends, welcome to Student of Intention. This is the little corner of the internet where we enjoy the pursuit of purpose. We spark, strengthen, and support self-discovery. I'm your host, Bobby Dysart. I'm really excited about today's guest. We're just rolling through season 2 here. We actually only have 2 episodes left. If you've been following along, you know that we've been discussing the 5 buckets framework. The 5 buckets is the name of the book that I am publishing very soon. And it's the framework that sort of led to my own self-discovery, or at least my most recent self-discovery. And that self-discovery has led to this podcast, a newsletter called Student of Intention, as well as a community. And this season not only has been focused on kind of uncovering the 5 buckets, talking about the 5 buckets, but doing it through the lens of the Student of Intention community members. So we've covered 4 of the buckets: relationships, creativity, health, learning, and now we're coming to work. And in today's show, we're going to cover the work bucket, I should say, with Student of Intention community member Adam Cleveland. Before we introduce Adam, I wanted to bring up a quick lesson I learned myself on a little trip to Arizona. I just went for, I guess it was 6 days, and I was visiting my grandparents. My father was in town, as well as my good friend and cousin, Buck Gully. And what I noticed was that was sort of my first time being away in a while. And I kind of felt sort of taken back a little bit, sort of not myself. You know, I was kind of knocked off my rhythm of my intentions. I wasn't waking up at the same time. I wasn't drinking tea in the morning. I wasn't going for my runs. Dare I say, let a couple morning pages slip. And in doing so, I just sort of felt out of balance and started having these kind of weird feelings of, you know, fear, anxiety, tension, whatever. And I think 2 realizations came, right? Like, one, I quickly got out of that by just anchoring around some intention. So I did go for a run. I actually met up with community member Ryan Kearney, went for a hike, had some tea with him. And it's crazy how quickly you can sort of zap back into yourself or connect with yourself through the smallest of intentions, the smallest of actions. And then secondly, I was like, you know what? I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I felt those feelings, because I'm not creating these habits or these intentions. I'm not finding this side of myself to be sort of safe in this like haven of my Newport Beach home. It's so I can experience the world in my true authentic way, with my true authentic self. And I can't go experience the world if I don't go other places. I don't meet other people. I don't do other things. So it was just another realization, just another moment. It was like, you know what? Even if something feels a little off at first, I can anchor around my intentions and some growth will come out of it. So, growth, I think that's maybe going to be the word of this pod. In some of the pre-show chats with Adam. So with that, I'll shift to introducing Adam. Adam is founder and CEO at Attractful, where he helps startups design, build, and scale their revenue engine. He's an advisor at our local venture studio, Operate. And most importantly, he's a prominent member of the Student of Intention community. And my friend, Adam, welcome to Student of Intention.
Thanks a lot, Bobby. I really appreciate it.
Yes. So before we started recording, we were talking about growth, and I think you're actually comparing that to work. And so I want to open the show up with defining the work bucket. And I think you're coming in with a pretty interesting conversation around this idea between of work versus growth and vice versa. Now, in the 5 Buckets book, I define work as our contributions. I go as far as to say it's the treasure that we can offer the world. But that's me. What about you? How do you define work or the work bucket?
Yeah, it's interesting. When we discussed this show in this bucket a couple of days ago, or maybe even a week ago, I was thinking about work and contribution, and I had all these ideas around what I'm supposed to be doing or what work means to me. And then as I was taking a shower this morning, I had this revelation of like work and what is the definition. So I just looked it up, and right, it's really just applying a force to anything to create change or movement. I said, well, that's interesting, right? And then I started thinking about growth, and growth to me looks a lot like, change, movement, but the outcome or the result that we attach to is sometimes further down the horizon, right? Whereas if I'm working on something, I can move this cup of tea in front of me across the table. I just worked by definition.
That's right.
Right. But, I guess where I'm going with this is this concept of like work being this force that's applied for movement and growth being something that one could say is very relatable. But I believe that society, and even for me, I've had different situations and conversations with people where the concept of work is looked at poorly. The concept of a workaholic. We don't hear, oh, Adam's a growthaholic, but I've heard, Adam, you're a workaholic, right? Like, what does that mean? And so, that's the concept that I'm kind of wrestling with in my head. I'd love to explore with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways that agrees with what I said, right? I sort of look at work, and I haven't always looked at work this way, but in the book, I look at it as my contribution. I look at it as treasure that we can sort of give to the world, right? I think if you ask 100 people to define work, I don't know how many shed positive light on it like that, right? Like that's sort of a romantic perspective of work. But I think to your point, right? Growth is looked at sort of like universally as that, right? Like growth is looked at as a good thing. And so I guess, I don't know, I guess, has that always been the case for you? Have you always looked at work like that? And then what does that mean for you, like in your daily life? Sort of having that definition, this definition of growth, as opposed to maybe something a little bit more pragmatic, something a little more, dare I say, negative.
Sure. I want to touch on the first part of your question because it's important. I think that work for me is how I always identified. Like I always identified myself by what was on my business card. And it actually took a lot of work for me in self-development and improvement. And, I'm also a person in recovery, for example, and that stages and seasons of life that I went through, I really started to figure out that I'm more than what's on my business card, right? So I've wrestled with this concept of, work being the one thing that defines you versus, you're more than that, right? And I think just in general, the concept of growth for me is a lifelong pursuit, right? I love how you always put the pursuit of purpose, right? I'm pursuing it, meaning there's work that has to be done if I'm pursuing it, but the result or, when I actually achieve it or get it, right? It's a lifelong adventure. The horizon is out there. And so you always, what I really attach to is enjoy the experience along the way, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's that gratitude piece, the enjoyment piece. That was something when I was writing the book that I had to wrestle with when I start talking about the work bucket, right? It's I think, again, sort of universally accepted to say like, okay, I get it. You enjoy the relationships that you bring into your life, right? Or you can at least try to, right? That seems sort of normal, right? You can enjoy creative pursuits, right? Trying to do things that maybe a lot look at as like play, right? Learning, same thing, right? Like most people, if they're going to read, particularly on their own time, they're doing it for the love of reading, the love of knowledge, the love of the author, entertainment, what have you, right? All down the list. Work, once you start talking about work, it doesn't conjure up these feelings of enjoyment.
Well, you know what just came up for me when you were saying that? When I've typically said I got to put my head down and get to work on something, it's usually because I've identified something I'm deficient at and I need to fix it, right? And here's a good example. I was working for a Silicon Valley startup, right? Huge unicorn status, the whole 9 yards, and I got promoted to a VP, and I was the youngest VP in the company. But what I realized really quickly was that I was promoted because of my technical skills and my leadership skills. I had no managerial skills. Someone came to me and they said, I need to be out for 2 weeks because my dog's sick. I'm like, can you, okay, right? And
Caught
I'm
off
just
guard a little bit.
yeah. So I realized I'm like, I don't know how to manage. Like, I don't know what this looks like. Let's get to work. Let's fill this deficit. Let's fill this void. What is the one Spencer Johnson, the 1 minute manager, pick this one up. Okay, that's good. Easy. Next, and you move on to the next one and the next one until, you start to put your deficiencies or that imposter syndrome that we tend to generate in our heads to bay. And that's the motivator for me.
Well, I want to hear more about the work you do today and how you do it. And then I want to talk about this concept of recovery or personal growth, right? You said you've been in recovery for some time. I think it's fascinating. I've through my work with Student of Intention, I've become very exposed to the community of folks going through recovery, right? Both as individuals and as like the content just fascinates me. The idea of the community around it fascinates me. And so there's a lot to unpack there. And at the same time, I'm also like, it's just interesting that like, I feel like I've always been in recovery. I feel like everybody's recovering in their own way, right? Like that's just the shadow side of growth, right? And the second we sort of lean into that, we start to, I think again, work starts to become a little bit more of like a contribution, something more of a gift. But we'll talk about that. I want to stay here on the work you do today. And I know you choose to do it, so I think it's a little bit more enjoyable. I think you look at it as a contribution, but yeah, talk to me about it, about how about the work you do, and then how you look at what you do.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun. I'll say that I didn't always get to say that, right? The work
that must be empowering, dude.
Yeah,
say that again.
I have a lot of fun.
That's pretty awesome,
dude. It's great.
Yeah,
it's amazing. I was pursuing careers for a very long time that I told myself I needed because of what the exterior world thinks of me, right? Money, power, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, startups, all sounds great. But for me, what a really defining moment in my life has been in the last 3 years where I transitioned out. I took some time for myself, did some self-exploring and discovery. I uncovered some things, discarded some things, recovered a new identity or purpose for myself. I'm not saying I got it all figured out. I'm still wandering around, bumping my head on the brick wall from time and time again. But what I have discovered is the work that I'm doing now is meaningful and I'm passionate about it, and it gives me the freedom that I want. I think that's really important to note. But, just to maybe get into the nitty gritty of it, it's really helping startups. Startups has been a niche for me, especially software, but it's really coming in as a fractional executive and allowing C-level folks in those companies to kind of move a higher level up so they can start thinking about fundraising or Series B round or Series C round, and kind of filling a void of just being a leader, a fractional executive for their teams, coaching their teams. But where my technical skills come into play is really around marketing and sales, right? So building that marketing funnel and that sales funnel so that, they have a predictable revenue model that makes a lot of sense, and that we can quantify time and time again how much does it cost to bring in a lead, how much does it cost to turn into a customer, and then we just keep running that model and running it and running it. And it provides a lot of transparency and a lot of what's a better way, a lot of transparency, but a lot of comfort, I would say, right? If you're a CEO at a series, a startup that just raised 15 million, and now you're thinking about the next thing, and you're thinking about hiring and this and that. And it's like, I don't have a good process, right? I want to hire 16 salespeople. Great. What's your sales process? We hand out leads and we tell people to go get them. Great. What email do they send? Whatever one they write. Right. Are you sure you wanted them sending every email that they write? Do you want to write some of them yourself? And, and that's really what marketing is about, right? It's about controlling the message and testing it and experimenting so we can have a predictable model that says, if we send these 6 emails, we'll get this many demos, right? Whatever that looks like for your model. But that's the work I've been doing. And, I've got to kind of work across a lot of different companies. I'm finding that, in consulting, a lot of people say that you need to find your niche. And I was like, okay, software, right? But software means a lot of things. But what I'm finding is that the same methods and methodologies that we use, and you were in this world, in software as a service, this can be applied to manufacturing companies. I'm working with one company who places students in medical school in Ireland, and that's their entire business model. So a closed one for them, is a qualified student that gets accepted to one of these medical schools. And I'm like, still the same funnel, it's all still the same. Right. And, I've mentioned I'm from the South, right? And, the saying that I was always pounded in my head is, when in doubt, take thee to the cross, right? And how that's transferable to this conversation is, I always say, when in doubt, go to your funnel, and everything's revealed. So that's the work I've been doing.
Yeah, man. And I mean, it's been great to see in the short time that we've been sort of in each other's work lives, right? Just to see how you go to work, how organized you are, the folks that you work with. I can just tell you're bringing a lot of value to the marketplace. Pretty much just on your own, right? Like you're building this brick by brick, email by email, right? Engagement by engagement. And from a niche perspective, what's interesting is like what you just said at the top of that description, which is, your niche seems to be helping C-levels sort of get some space to level themselves up and see a few steps ahead, get some clarity, and get a little bit of sanity about, this rocket ship that a lot of times they're building while they're flying. And to me, that's just like it's pretty remarkable when you're talking about the pedigree of human being that it already takes to get that kind of business going and to that level, for you to come in and have to offer them value in a way that they can receive it. That's got to be both challenging and rewarding.
Yeah.
What do you credit your ability to do that? I assume like 5 years ago, Adam Cleveland can't deliver the same way that Adam Cleveland delivers today.
Yeah. Work. I realize I have a lot of deficiencies, so I read a lot of books. No, I mean, you just nailed it. I mean, one thing that popped in my head as you were describing that is, the concept of a wolf pack, right? The alpha wolf. They actually don't lead from the front. They lead from the back, And they lead from the back so they can observe all of the other wolves and they can see who's struggling. And that's when they swoop in to help, right? And that's what I try to do. And I think that the way that I've gotten there is a couple of things. I say work and jest, but it really is, right? Personal work, acknowledging that I still have work and growth to do. Mentors, if you don't have a mentor, get one, right? I mean, for anybody who's listening, right? Is probably the single most important thing in my life. I have a mentor for marketing, that, a person that I really rely on, a mentor for business, just in general, who's successful in that. Part of the student of intention community, which is huge. And the reason why it's huge is it's accountability. If during this podcast I say, Bobby, I want to live with more intention. You say, okay, great. In 6 months, call me back and tell me what you've done.
That's right.
And I don't do, and you will. You'll probably say in a week, right? And I don't do anything. And then in 6 months, you call me and you say, okay, how did that go living with intention? So, I didn't do anything, right? That's why it's important to have a community, a group, people around you to hold you accountable, and we do this with each other, right? But I think it takes a very strong group of individuals, to get a text message from a guy and say, hey, how's it going with that? Did you finish that chapter? Guy, girl, anybody, right? And you say, what are you checking in on me? Right? But that's where it starts up here in your mind. Change your mindset. Flip it. This person cares about me, right? Getting in a circle of people that care about you. Getting mentors that care about you. And people always say, sorry, I'm going to go off. People always say, it's hard to get a mentor. How do I get a mentor? There's so many people. Just get on LinkedIn and post, I need a mentor. I bet you'll get 15,000 people saying something, Like, it's a cool thing. Well, one thing I've noticed about like the pandemic and this shift to virtual is that everybody's online and everybody's looking to help, because cognitively, I think we've all discovered that if we want to really feel good, we need to give back. If we want to keep some of the things that we've grown into, we've got to learn how to give it away. And, you can find a mentor, I mean, anyway, so those are some of the things: accountability, community, mentors.
Well, yeah, I think you've done so much. And again, I'm going to bring it back to recovery. The part that when my friend, our mutual friend, Kevin, community member, Kevin Winbauer, when he heard my first podcasts about my relationship with alcohol and just me trying to define it, trying to figure it out, he'd called me up after, we hadn't talked to each other in like 5 or 6 years. And I had no idea that he was going through his own recovery, and just, as a friend, reached out, had a good conversation. We reconnected. I ended up going to a couple of meetings with him, just getting, again, sort of fascinated with the community, how long it's lasted, some of the literature and content. And the big takeaway for me was just like, there's actually a phrase that I think gets tossed around quite a bit, which is it's a design for living.
Yeah.
And I just find it fascinating, because I'm like, you don't really see a design for living for addicts or non-alcoholics, right? Like, and why is that, right? Like, that doesn't make sense. And I think that's one of the big reasons I started this journey of figuring out what living with intention means, writing the book, doing all these things, is I'm like, maybe I'm not an addict, or at least not to the extent that some folks are, but I'll be damned if I don't want my own design for living, right? And I think in doing so, I've figured out like all of this leads to better work. And that's because, again, I think work is in service to others, right? Like true valuable work that ultimately can be more enjoyable for you as an individual, can be more impactful to the world, and arguably worth more compensation. And so I think you're going through all those things. You're doing every bit. In fact, in the book, I write this about kind of all the buckets and how they align to work. So I write, this book aims at increasing your ability to live with intention. Doing so across all facets of life ultimately enables you to enjoy and create more beautiful work. Deeper relationships open opportunities and alignment. Training your creative muscles helps you add unique value quickly. A healthy mind and body provide positivity and energy. The more you learn, the more perspective and skills you can bring to your work, right? So it's really figuring out, how each of these areas of your life, how you want to experience them, that ultimately is going to allow you to deliver more value in the work you do and also enjoy it more.
Yeah. I think what you just said about positive energy for the body and mind, that's important, right? And my journey for recovery and what I've looked at is I've noticed that sometimes I have a bit of a thinking problem, right? And
Bit of a thinking problem.
Yeah.
Say more about that.
Meaning sometimes I remember the things I should forget and I forget the things I should remember. And I look at situations differently. I have a bit of an obsession with my mind on various things, right? And the result for me is always more of everything. I'm not 100% guy, I'm 110% guy, That's why even with my work I do today, it's like I don't take more than 4 clients because I'm so ingrained in everything that's going on. I don't want to, I don't want to do anymore. I don't want to be involved in anymore because I won't give it the attention. And, the design for living piece, man, I mean, you nailed it. It's a really special thing for me. And it's something that I didn't think would, if you told me 3 years ago I would be sitting down here on a podcast talking about recovery, I would tell you you're crazy. But I'll tell you what all of this journey has brought to me. It is a spiritual connection, right? I mean, work, and just to tie it back to work, right? I think it all happens up here mentally. What do I want and what is the price I'm willing to pay to get it? And, there was a point in my life where I realized that what I wanted and the price that I was willing to pay was anything. I pity the people who never get to experience desperation, because I've gotten to experience that, desperation to change, for growth. And through that experience, the result of it is living a life that, is free of anything that affects me from the neck up. And, deeper, more meaningful relationships, showing up for the people that I care about. And, by design, I'm selfish. I can be self-centered. Actually, no, I'm selfish, self-centered, and self-seeking in almost everything I do. I have to work to not be like that. I have to give in order to stay humble and to stay real, and that's really what recovery is for me. It's not a matter of I want to do it. It's a matter of I get to do it. I get to do this, to live like this.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. A lot of good things there. I'm just curious because this comes up for me all the time. I shouldn't say all the time, but it comes up enough. You just had the awareness to talk about your selfishness, how self-centered you can be, and that you have to work to sort of overcome those, we'll call it constraints, faults, whatever. Do you ever get tired of having to do that?
Yeah, all the time. All the time.
What does that look like?
I mean, my character defects show up everywhere. all the time.
Yeah.
And that's where having a good group, good people around you to help you acknowledge and see when they're showing up. And now I'm at the point where, I'm cognitively aware when it happens. And, I'll tell you with every month, year that goes by where I am sober, and free, you almost given this gift of pause, the ability to just pause before you react to something. And that pause gets a millisecond longer with almost every month that passes. And so with each millisecond of pause I get to show up a little bit different and react. Not necessarily, and react a little bit different. And that's important.
Those pauses, baby.
Yeah.
So here's the other fascinating thing I find myself talking like this as well. I don't know if my wife's gonna listen to this, but she'll probably kill me if I say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I find myself sort of worrying about work less because I'm concerned with my own growth first and foremost. And I sort of take this approach that I'm like, dude, if I handle this, if I handle this, right, pointing at my head, pointing at myself, then the work stuff's gonna work out. It's gonna take care of itself. And I hear that when I listen to you. I hear that same sort of methodology, right? Like you're talking about pause, not in relation to, your business challenges or your business opportunities or what your clients are going through. You're literally talking about a pause for how you show up, right? How you sort of handle a situation, how you look at yourself, how you think about your world around you, right? Is there something to that? Is there something to unlocking that for us all so that our work can be better?
Yeah, you just nailed it. And this is something that I was just talking to another friend about. And you see all the media around the millionaire morning and, the millionaire mindset. And, here's all the steps, everything. Wake up, wake up at this time, do 25 push-ups, make your bed, keep your shoes at your nightstand so that you go for a run immediately when you wake up. It's all this stuff, right, that you got to do. But ultimately, the main takeaway for me is that the more I take care of myself, the better I show up for everybody. And that's exactly what you just nailed it, right? And I'm sorry, this just was not a concept that was taught to me.
Right. No, me neither.
Right? The diet you eat, or your diet, the exercise, how much self-care. Even this word self-care, like it's a great word, but I didn't hear it until I was 30. I was like, the more self-care you do, the better you're able to show up for people, the better your work is, the more fulfilling your relationships are. And, it's not a novel concept. I mean, Napoleon Hill is probably one of my favorite, self-help gurus. And, most people know the Think and Grow Rich, right? But he has the laws of success, right? And this was written about the same time, actually, that the book Alcoholics Anonymous was written. And if you read any of the concepts of his book, it talks about a framework for living, how to design your life, when you wake up, upon awakening, what are the things that you should be doing, throughout your day, what you should be doing. It talks about the business person that takes time in the middle of the day for lunch. To me, it was like the guys that take an hour lunch are the people who aren't serious about their work, right? And I had managers like this who were like, life is serious, work is serious, this is a serious business. And I'm not saying that it's not serious. I'm just saying that if we slow down and take a breath and like go outside and take a walk in the middle of the day for 10, 15 minutes, are you really going to be that less productive? Are you going to miss out on something that you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's crazy where we're going, I think as a society, because this working remotely, that's going to be it. And when people are working remotely, you work whenever you want, No one really says anything. You take lunch when you want to take lunch, and, maybe it leads to happier and healthier people. We'll see.
As long as they're intentional about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think everything you said there reigns true for me in my experience. Like my first job, I was cold calling door to door in the summer heat of northern LA, basically. Fully suited and booted. Had to wear a suit and tie every single day. Nice. It was definitely that sort of office boiler room culture where it was very serious. I think I know my first manager even walked around the bullpen with a baseball bat. And I just, and I think the tough part about those situations, and then the complete other end of the spectrum, which is these millionaire mornings that you talk about, is we tend to sort of crave like pieces or like strategies or segments of what maybe one human being is doing to experience life more fully, to enjoy the work they do and have a greater impact. And then not only are we not getting the whole story from how it's presented, then we're just doing our own version of it, our own sort of copycat version, right? So that's what I think when I talk about student of intention, when I talk about in the book, and I write it, I try to make it as unique a journey for everyone as possible. I try to leave it pretty open-ended that, when you're trying to discover these different parts of yourself, and you're even trying to discover more about the work you do, it's really your own game. And you've got to set the smallest micro commitments, little experiences that you can sort of try on for size to start to chip away at like, okay, what actually works for you? What feels good for you? Because for some people, maybe it is having running shoes next to their bed. For some people, maybe it is taking a long lunch. And dare I say, for some people, it might be showing up full suit and boot, taking their work really serious.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a great point. I'll tell you a recent change I've made in my life. I was married to the idea that I had to work out in the morning to have a more productive day. So alarm goes off 5:30. I'm in my workout by 6:20. I'm out by 7:20. I'm, boom, boom, boom. Now, I'm not saying that my morning, like I don't feel better after a workout. So do I feel good in the morning? Yes. I'm also like, I work out hard, and I'm like, whew, like I'm tired. So I said, you know what? If I'm going to work out like this, let me change it. Let me change it up. Let me still wake up at 5:30, but instead let me do my prayer, my meditation, my morning pages, my whatever, even using the morning for growth time, right? Reading about something that I'm interested in. Some mornings I'll read about relationships or marketing or sales or listen to a podcast or whatever it is. I'll do that. And then I started working out in the afternoons, and I found that I finished my day sooner. So I'm working out, in the afternoon, and I'm going all out because I know when I go home, I don't have a call to get on. I don't have anything. I can go home, I can eat, I can shower, I can spend some time with my girlfriend. And then, you know what I'm saying? It was like, why have I been? And then I got mad at myself, like, you've been doing it wrong, you idiot, I hate to say that, you idiot. That's not a good way to talk to yourself, but still, I can do it in the afternoon. And my day's just as, productive or successful as I wanted it to be.
Yeah, you were kind of forcing it for whatever reason. This sort of idea of what would make you feel better as opposed to what was making you feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I need to run in the middle of the day myself. Like literally my biggest creative unblocker is just going for a run. So if I'm sitting around and trying to write or trying to create some sort of consulting doc or commission plan or whatever, and I just can't stare at it, the stuff's just not coming out, I got to go for a run. And then magically I sort of receive it when I'm out there. Yeah. It all sort of comes bearing gifts, comes to clarity.
How many times have you tried to push through it when something's not coming or you're trying to finish something and you're like, no, I just got to push through it?
That's such a great question. And more times than I can count and less.
Yeah.
I'd say that's definitely a realization, is just the lack of, I don't want to say importance, but certainly around like the urgency of like timeliness, right? Like, it's just like, I don't even know if you're in the meeting. You weren't in the meeting yesterday. We were just talking about this. So it's something I've been using the morning pages for, actually, where I'll think something's really important and I'll just want to squeeze the crap out of it, just get it done, done. I'm all clenched up. I'm at my laptop and I'm like banging my head against the wall. And then I'll be like, you know what? Like, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not getting this done. I'll write about it tomorrow morning. And it's amazing when I actually write it on the page the next morning, the process of actually putting it to page sort of like takes it out of me and puts whatever that outcome that I was driving towards, it puts space between me and that outcome and it just makes it smaller. It makes it that much more achievable, that much less demanding of myself. And I sort of am like, wow, what was the big deal about that thing?
Yeah. It's a great work hack. No one ever taught me that.
No.
I've learned that as well. Take a minute, step back from it, but no one ever taught me that.
So, I do, we were talking earlier too before the show and about how we get to choose the work we do, right? And I think that's a polarizing statement, right? A lot of people will disagree and say that they are stuck in the job that they're stuck in or what have you. And I feel for those people. I for one, right now, I'm not going to say this is an absolute truth that I won't be putting my foot in mouth, years from now, whatever. But for right now, I firmly believe we choose the work we do, just like we choose all the other experiences that we have in life. Yeah. Wouldn't call myself a student of intention if I thought otherwise. But I'm also willing to say that I've gotten here slowly but surely. Taking a risk on a startup back in 2012, taught me a little bit about this idea of intention. I didn't realize it at the time. I just sort of was jumping into it ignorantly and picked up some things along the way. Picked up a little bit more when I opened up my consulting business in 2019 and pick up a bunch more now, leaning into this, this life of being an author, of being a creator. You obviously, with a successful consulting business, I think feel the same. Actually, I know you feel the same, but I got to think you didn't always feel that way, or you certainly didn't have the same perspective that you have now. I want us to do a little work for the listeners that maybe don't have that experience. If you could go back in time, maybe when you were first starting your consulting gig, like what did those first little intentions look like, where you started kind of digging around a little bit to figure out, well, maybe I could go do this.
Yeah. I want to go back even further.
Yeah, go back further.
Fresh out of college, first job. What do? Money. Money. Like, that's what it was about for me. Yeah. How much money am I going to make? And fortunately, I got pushed into a direction because I graduated around 2010 with a finance degree, and banks were the worst companies to go work for at the time, right? It's like, oh yeah, too big to fail, all this other stuff. So I'm like, man, what do I do? And so I found a startup. And when I found a startup, I got into that company and I was hooked. It's like you can touch everything, you can be a part, your fingerprints are on across the entire organization. And I thought, that's cool. And it was the first kind of like, well, I'm going to not chase a paycheck and bank on the opportunity that this business is successful and sells, right? And you get options, right? And options aren't really not that great. As much as everybody likes to believe in your head, they're not really that great because you got to pay to,
Yes.
So, yeah. All right, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but if I could explain, or if I could just scratch that surface, it's one, don't chase a paycheck. And two, the thing that, if I fast forward a little bit to consulting, it's the network that you're building around yourself means so much more than you will ever realize until you need them. It's funny. We were just talking about this too. I started this business. I don't have a website. I don't there's no, all the things that you think you need to start a business. I don't have any of that. I don't think you start, we're just going,
Yeah.
And, sometimes you just got to go, and the thing that it's not chasing that paycheck, it's cultivating, working your network, staying involved with those people, calling and checking in, how's it going? Sending a text message, putting their birthdays in your calendar so you know when to text them happy birthday. The smallest things, right? And then the other thing that was a revelation for me is that, really kill it for somebody. When I say kill it, I mean hit a home run. Provide so much value for that first client, that first customer, that they become a raving fan. And you've got it, right? Because now you have a referable person from here, for the rest of your career, right? It's like, I killed it. I hit all the metrics. I helped this company do exactly what they wanted. And that was really a game changer. And, I'd like to say, you do a dime's worth of work for a nickel worth of pay, right? My grandfather used to say this. But I think that concept stood out to me. Work a little bit harder than what you're getting paid, and then the money will come, right? Things will come. And I can tell you right now, it's coming in. I'm working. It doesn't really feel like work because I like what I do, but there are things that I do that aren't, always that fun, we'll say, right? But, I can demand a certain rate for my time that I never used to be able to, but it's only because I did those things on the front end, and that's what worked for me.
Yeah, nobody taught me that either. My first job out of college was definitely chasing a buck. I wanted to pay off some credit card debt, so it was literally I just want some money as quickly as possible. And I remember, every single year sort of just having this realization of this seems like a kind of a no-win game. No matter how far I go down this rabbit hole of chasing money, it's just going to get deeper and deeper. And it wasn't until I took that first chance of opening that startup, which wasn't even perfect in the sense of from a perspective, I saw the opportunity and I also saw it as like, oh, we're just going to be this huge startup, this huge success. We're going to, we're going to be the next Facebook or whatever, which was definitely not true. But just having that lens of, take the shot, get out of my comfort zone, see if I can. And then, what was interesting is like, I quickly adapted to realizing like, man, my entire job right now, it's such a small job. It's such a small thing when you're in a startup with 1 or 2 people or 3 people, because your only task is to go find someone that you can provide enough value that they pay you for it.
Yeah.
It's literally nothing else. To your point, as well, like you don't have a website. I remember my first 3 months of consulting, and I had made this mistake in that startup. Like in that startup, we did everything but find that first customer. Like everything. We got fundraising, we got an office, we got staff, we got coders, we got websites, we got ads and publications. Man, we had some stuff. It looked like momentum from the outside in. And then look at the biggest lesson I learned was, I learned 2 lessons. One, I was like, you actually get what you want. Like, it's crazy. I was like, we wanted an office. We wanted fundraising. These are the things we intended to get. And you know what? We got them.
Yeah.
And then B, I was like, man, if I could do this business over again, I wouldn't have done any of that. I would have just gone and been a broker. It was a software startup that was basically like an Airbnb for lessons, right? And we got all that stuff. And I was like, I don't need any of this stuff. All I need is a couple lesson providers, and I need to go find them customers. Yeah. And I could just, count on the exchange. And I took that to I was really, really grateful for that lesson, because I took that into my consulting gig. And I remember I didn't mess with anything. I didn't mess with business cards, didn't mess with branding. Yeah. After I had my first customer, who was from a referral from a network, to your point, I remember I needed to charge him. And I didn't want to charge him through my personal banking account. So I went and registered the LLC, and the first thing that came to mind to name the business was Finley Track, which is the name of kind of the locals' name for our neighborhood. And I did it not out of creativity, not out of thought, just out of urgency of like, okay, I need to get a bank account established so this person can pay me.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I think that's the biggest lesson I think I can share, and I think you would agree. Well, I think we shared a lot of lessons today, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Some good stuff.
Well, cool, man. Well, I think it's about time to wrap up. I've got a couple other things I want to say to the listeners, just to sort of wrap up the season. But anything, this is your time. This is your first pod, right?
It's my first pod.
Anything you want to experience before we call it quits?
I think I've done it, man. This was really enjoyable. It feels a little nerve-wracking at first, right? You got the earphones on. It's like we're in in the cockpit of an airplane. But then you just sit down and it's just 2 guys having a conversation. And, I guess my biggest hope is that we said something that somebody will listen to, that they can take away and say, oh, maybe I can apply that in some way in my life. So
100%. 100%. Well, I appreciate you jumping in, and update for the listeners. So again, this season was about not only highlighting the buckets, but also highlighting members of the community that have meant the world to me in my life and in my own journey of self-discovery. And it's not going to stop here. So for season 3, I'm going to bring folks back, folks like Adam, folks like Chelsea, folks like Monica, etc. And we're going to sort of broaden the hosting of the Student of Intention podcast by hosting pods together, some of them hosting separately. But this is season 3 is sort of the broadening, I'll call it the broadening of our community through this medium, so that we're all continuously learning and giving. Adam, who just did his first pod, is going to get to have this experience in my chair as a host. as well as connect with people that are from his network, his community. And he's going to learn a little bit about himself and his voice in that instance, and all down the line of some of the folks I just mentioned. So stay tuned for that. I'll have, I think, one more episode to wrap this, and maybe we'll have a couple community members in that one. Might even be you. Who knows? But I'm really excited. That idea for the podcast and for the evolution of Student of Intention came to me, I don't know, about 45, 60 days ago. Yeah. And first things first was to get you out here, talk about the work bucket, get a little vulnerable, and I think we did that.
Yeah.
So thanks, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
Hey, it's Bobby. Thanks for listening to today's show. For more, follow Student of Intention at www.studentofintention.com. And remember, don't wait, start small, learn as you go.